Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Calen Carpenter. With me is my partner, co-host, and father, Brandon. Before we get started, for those of you on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. You can shut off the notification bell if you want. Facebook, like, comment, share. And on all platforms, spread the word to your friends and to the opening notes.
What if you have
Uh,
no friends?
well, we can make some. Uh,
Okay.
so the big thing is we were actually planning on we need to get our annual meeting knocked out, which we haven't done yet, and we were going to discuss what we do on those annual meetings. So what we do is we do planning for the yearly things. So during the annual meeting, this is kind of the stuff we discuss. It's uh, what were the previous year's completed items? What were some of those big tasks and projects we finished? Uh, what are some projects we need to get done? For example, we've done corrals, fences, development around the ranch, and then of course, what are some of the breeding plans? How are we going to manage our pastures? And then that goes with like weeds, rotations of animals, stuff like that, and then purchase plans, land, animals, equipment. Sometimes that gets decided for us throughout the year, and it's not planned, but it happens. And then there's beautification plans, and then what are some of the things that need to get fixed? For example, what are some of those summer and fall or winter projects? And then also, what are some of those things that we do when they don't need to be fixed, which is completely unfamiliar to me because we have been trying to resurrect things on the ranch since I remember. So that's really kind of a farce, but I'll give it to you, Dad. That was a quick intro.
Well, there's really two things. It's about improvements,
Yeah.
and then what takes more precedence is maintenance. If something breaks, you got to fix it.
Right.
Something's a problem, you got to take care of it. If you're going to try to maintain something, so it's at least giving you the status quo of how you do business. I mean, that's what you got to do, and that happens. You'll have something will tear a fence down, or some posts will rot on a gate. You got to fix that. Or somebody's animals crawl through your fence and gives you not red calves but black calves. you know Everything stops. You gotta get that done. I mean, that's the way it is, and that has happened, does happen. uh a pump goes out. That's
Right.
that's an emergency. That's not just maintaining something, and that's happened. And you might have a couple of days of troubleshooting because of the remoteness of where we're at. uh let that happen. I put on over 500 miles in one day, going back and forth because vendor give me the wrong pump.
Mm.
It was a 220 pump instead of a 110. And I'm like troubleshooting. I was like, these guys never make mistakes like that. I mean, it's very, they do, I shouldn't say never because they did, but it's very rare. I mean, they
Right.
match things up. And so that happened. And I mean, I'm tracing control boxes and voltages coming in and out. And I was like, God, this thing has got power down to this pump. It's an emergency.
Right.
Yeah. So you deal with it, and you get it done. I don't care. It doesn't matter what day of time, a night it is, or whatever. You got animals dependent on some water, or then you start moving animals around to get them to water.
Mm-hmm.
That now becomes a priority. If you got a spring like we do, then you get those animals moved. Now you go back to the emergency. So one emergency can create an even bigger emergency, and prioritize. So it's all about prioritization. It's about maintenance, and then hopefully improvements. So, and then you're right. Added costs come up. Um, Spent some money on a couple of items, and one of them, like $8,500 for a trailer.
Yeah.
I've been looking for 10 years, but if I
So
was
I
to
was gonna say
purchase that
sometimes
trailer,
it's
thirteen
one of those
thousand
times.
dollars.
Yeah. Well, it's like we were talking about it. Sometimes it's worth it to be like, oh, bite the bullet because if you don't do it now, you're gonna end up losing money in the long term. So it's worth it to just kind of take the hit early on
Right.
because it's going to end up lasting. It's going to last a while, but you're going to ultimately save $5,000 over the course of that time.
Right. And I've hate borrowing stuff from people, and I've borrowed flatbed trailers from a neighbor that has been really, really good about saying, yeah, come get it. Yeah, no big deal. Because that's something you don't use all the time. But when you
Mm-hmm.
need it, you really need it. So, um, there's stuff like that. Things happen. You're always trying to improve, uh, do something a little better, easier on yourself, because I don't have slave labor anymore. both you and
I
Braden,
mean,
the
you do,
government
but
owns
it's
you.
like 3 weeks out of the year.
Yeah, then all we want to do is drink beer
Drink
and
beer.
go, just enjoy being around instead of. And I know I can remember what it was like being in college. Is like I couldn't wait to come home so that I could actually work some cattle, get on a horse, and do
Hmm.
some real work instead of. And but to me, it's like okay, I'm doing this stuff all the time. Boys are home. Let's just kind of hang out, have a barbecue. Go drive to some breweries. Just you know
I never
what we
say
need
no
to
to
do is
breweries either. So
yeah. Well, what we
twist
need to
my
do
arm.
yeah. What we need to do is take your mother fishing.
She doesn't go fishing though.
Your mother loves to fish.
Really?
That's
Huh.
the problem.
Okay.
And it just breaks my heart because I'd take you guys not near enough. Is you try to work in some of these trips in between and I got some pictures of us. You guys were pretty little, sitting there holding up a string of fish that we'd caught. And I think your mom was. I think she was on a trip back east, if I recall, like either Pittsburgh or New
New
York
York.
with
Yeah.
some doing some stuff for her teaching. Getting more education doing that so she can be a better teacher. And so I can remember I was working nights, and I got off work at night, picked you guys. I slept for a couple of hours, and then took you guys up into the mountains.
Hmm.
We totally ignored work stuff we were supposed to be doing, and we trudged back up in there into a spot, and we caught a bunch of fish, and it was dark by the time we were coming out of there, and I was so tired. Remember, we had to stop in uh,
Columbus.
Columbus, and
Yep.
I pulled down in the park because I couldn't keep my eyes open. You guys were what 8, 10, maybe,
And probably. Well, I
probably
think
something like that.
we're probably littler than that because
Might have
she.
been.
So she went to New York. Right before 9/11, which I was in second grade when that happened.
That's right.
And then I think Pittsburgh was a year or two later. So I was either third or fourth grade, which would put me at 8, 9 at most.
Okay, so right in there, 7 and 9.
Yeah.
You guys were. So I remember stopping in the park, and I said, "Okay, you guys, I just need 30 minutes. Let me close my eyes, and in 30 minutes, wake me up, and then we'll go home." I come to, something woke me up, and you guys were so quiet. And I looked and was like, "Oh my God, you guys! It's been like 2 hours had went by." And like I felt so bad because there's two little boys that kept quiet, because we went on this little excursion. But it's kind of stuff like that. But yeah, we got to take mom fishing when you guys come home. She loves to go shishing.
Hmm. Interesting.
You don't remember when you guys were real little? We'd go
No.
up to Grandpa's cabin. They had
I,
that lake up by
I
there.
just assumed she liked it because we were having fun, but
She loves to fish. Loves
interesting.
to fish. These things you'll learn about your parents that you didn't
Yeah,
know before, but because we're
apparently.
using. But the thing you do know is how kind of a potty mouth she has when we're working cattle, though. I
Well,
mean,
I mean,
good
that's
God.
what it inspired me to go into the military service. She served honorably on the USS Potty Mouth, and we will always stick to that.
Yeah. No, it's so yeah, projects are projects. Sometimes those projects get waylaid because you know what? You got to live life too. And the older I get, the more I wish I'd have done more of that. And everybody says the same thing, but it's like,
Yeah,
you're trying to hold things together. You're trying to make it work. And there's nothing worse than saying you failed because you were off screwing around doing something.
yeah,
And, then you call it screwing around instead of living life. I mean, it's all on the perspective of how it impacts you later. And so the same thing. A lot of these things impact us. It's things you cannot control. And I was looking at statistics. We kind of keep some records on our cattle, but uh, we typically raise steers that are in that right at that 600-pound mark in from mid March through mid April to late April when they calve. We sell them usually right around the first part of October, and steers weigh about 600 pounds. It's not too bad. Grass fat. We don't supplement, no creep feed, nothing like that. They get what the cow gives them, and they got mineral, and they got grass, and they got fresh water that's filtered through sandstone through springs. Last year, we had an infestation of grasshoppers in this country, in the whole Northwest. I think most of the U.S. You could see them in the jet stream. Meteorologists were seeing these weird things. Yeah, there were huge clouds of grasshoppers. And
Interesting. I didn't know that.
oh God, yeah, you walked out here and grasshoppers would just fog up in front of you. You had to keep your mouth closed. They might jump, fly in your mouth. They were horrible. And this year they ate enough grass ahead of the cattle because it doesn't take them long, and there's not a thing you can do about them. 574-pound average on steers. So the grass quality, the amount, what they were getting, the grasshoppers were taking it, dropped, right at 25 pounds, almost 30 pounds off of our steers.
I was gonna say, which is
finish
money
weight.
for us.
That's money away from you, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I say you can't do anything about grasshoppers, you can't. I mean, you can spray for them, sure. Super expensive. You can spray, and then it just moves them to the neighbor, which when they kind of come back, guess what? They're right back on you again. Everybody has to do it, and you can't. And I don't like applying chemical anyway. You know how I feel about that. I'll do it for weeds when we have to, but I just don't. I don't like. I think the less chemical we put on our ground, the better off we are.
Yeah. Well,
So.
I think another thing we should say is because people are probably like, well, why do you have an annual meeting anyway? This is weird. Well, what's the reason for that? It's because we're an LLC. I was explaining this to somebody the other day. They're like, so is it a family ranch or what? I was like, well, actually, yeah, it is, but it's an LLC. He's like, well, who owns it then? I was like, the board, like the board members. He's like, well, who's on the board? He's like, it's the family. But so, yes,
little circle you're on.
It is a circle.
We're gonna circle back.
Yeah, but he's like, well, why is it designed that way? I was like, well, there's two reasons. One is property taxes, and the it's a mixture of that. The property taxes and then paying it.
Death taxes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that. So you could just say taxes, I guess. Taxes in general, death tax,
which taxes? We're taxed to death. There's all kinds of taxes.
Yeah.
Per capita tax on each animal. I mean,
yeah.
Property taxes, real estate taxes, personal property taxes.
Yeah.
And if one of us dies, in other words, whoever name is on the deed, they die and they have left it to their heirs or whoever they designate. Death taxes. The government gets to collect on all your hard work all those years. And so when we incorporated this, and it's a limited liability corporation or company, it's not an S corp, and then there's all kinds of different advantages or disadvantages to different types of structures. But this allowed us, because we're a small family ranch. It's not that big. At the time, we didn't have to really worry about where the tax structure was for, let's say your grandpa and grandma, the deed was in their name.
Right.
They're whacked in a car wreck or something, and then it's left to their heirs. The government at that time is small enough that they weren't gonna take anything. However, guess what changes? Laws and taxable amounts, and what are the inclusionary demographics of what the government can take. So we incorporated or made it a limited liability corporation, in that we can go ahead and make our family ranch sustainable without anybody personally owning it, and that way we can continue it on without and you guys are really the ones going to take advantage of this the most, I think, because your mom and I, we evaluated what the place was worth and structured it so that, okay, how can we do this? We had your grandpa and I were really the ones that were the major brainstorms behind it. And it wasn't necessarily a brainstorm; it was just thinking about how's the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked to your mom and your grandma, and then we talked to a tax attorney and got a valuation for the place. Then your mom and I, so we basically went into a partnership, is what it amounted to, essentially. And so your mom and I, we liquidated everything that we could possibly own to put into this, and a lot of it was just turned over to the ranch,
right?
Liquidated that way, and so that we could match half of the value. Well, we couldn't quite come up with that, so then you have to put up with X amount of dollars of improvements in order to do that, in order to make that valuation happen, form the corporation, equal shares, and then from then on, Now you just maintain it, and people come in and out of the board basically through death and birth. Uh, it's what it really amounts to. So that's how that takes place and how that happens, and that's where your improvements come in, and you're always wanting to improve to make things better. But we changed the direction we were headed. There's one time we had very few cows, but a pile of horses.
Yep.
So,
well, and I think this is kind of the point too of because so that's the first part, taxes, taxes. So the this is kind of the everybody's like, oh, and have you started watching Yellowstone yet? Yeah, I know he's got the DVDs because we're gonna do
in the mail, but no, I have not.
Okay, because we're gonna do a review out of Yellowstone here. Realistic.
God, I gotta sit on my butt and watch a bunch of movies.
You're Gavin. You're gonna be fine. So anyway,
I'm up all the time anyway. Why not, right?
Yeah, that's my point. So the in that show, the part that they do get right, and spoiler alert for Dad, but I know he's gonna agree with me. There's the fun part, which is the cowboy part, doing the work, sitting on the horse, watching the back end of a cow, doing the physical work. That's the easy part. The hard part is the business part and trying to make sure things match up, getting
I believe I've said that.
Yeah, you have.
The easy part of this is sitting on a horse watching the ass end of a cow.
Yeah. Trust me. Yeah. It's painful to hear that.
Again,
anyway.
For how many time?
And that's part of where we're going with this is like that's the first reason, taxes, but the whole business, like administrative, the infrastructure of the company, it's all because that's the important part, like really to keeping things together and sustaining it long term. Now, what's the second part? And this is what I told my peer was that it's also for inheritability purposes, because what normally happens is, okay, you buy it from grandpa and grandma and then turn around and the very next generation, I buy it from you, and we're constantly in debt, and we're doing is we're racking up more and more debt because the land gets appraised to a new level, the money inflates, whatnot. So it was worth 100,000. Now it's worth 120,000 the next generation. Now it's worth 150,000 the next generation, and so and those are
back during the homestead days. If this was valued at $100,000, that was a pile of money.
Right.
Inflation, the whole how that's all gone. Yeah, and then you've got an incredible change and swapping, jumping around of demographics, and again cultural differences. Where we got neighbors that moved in, and they seem like decent folks. I've visited with them a little. I've checked on them, to be honest with you, because they're pilgrims. They're from California, and they moved into this country, and they don't know, and you don't want to see them. You don't want to see anything bad happen to them, So I stopped in, introduced myself. Actually, I was riding by on a horse, and when I first met him, and you're trying to give them some tips without telling them what to do. About you might want to check your house for this. Look at this before winter sets in. You're doing all these things, and then I checked on them. We had a cold spell there, 10 days of really cold weather, 198 hours below zero. Some of that was 40 below. And so I check on them, hey, how you doing? And they were doing okay. They were hunkered down, and like you could tell it was a culture shock, but they moved in and they paid a lot of money for this place, or that place. It's very tiny, tiny little place now that just caused their taxes to go up. So yeah, there's tax liability, but sorry, that was kind of a side note of how things change.
Yeah.
Along with the inheritable part of what you were talking about. And then when I hear an inherit, I hear heritage in that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, is maintain a heritage.
Well, and to
as long as you like it.
Right. That's true. But the big part of like the why the meeting is because the business it was created because of those two reasons: taxes and trying to take over the family ranch every generation. So why the meeting? Well, because as an LLC, you have to have an annual meeting at minimum, right? You can have a quarterly meeting. You can have a monthly meeting. If we really chose to, we could do a weekly meeting. It's never going to happen. But
sitting around a dinner table is Could be
and
loosely, but
frankly, that I was gonna say,
that's never
frankly, that is
recorded.
it. Yeah, that's the point. Is you got to record it. You have to set it in your business portfolio and stuff like that. So that's why we do these annual meetings. And then so we take those meetings and then we go forward with, okay, so what did we do last year? And we talk about that. And there's been times where we just didn't get everything done, either because of finances or because, hey, there were too many emergencies that we had to handle. It just didn't
Exactly.
happen.
Well, and I try to list those out, as I try to think long term. You got short term and long term visions,
Yeah.
and and then things come up in between that
Mhm.
are like,
Life
oh, we
happens.
should do that, right? Or we should do that because it changes the way we're doing things otherwise too. But
And if
uh,
you think we're not watching others, oh, that worked for somebody over down the street or down the road like 5 miles. Maybe we could do something like that.
why would you not learn from somebody else's mistakes? That would be insanity to
Or their
not
or
learn.
their wins too. Oh wow, that's really working for them. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It works both ways.
Right.
Or that didn't work for them, but it will work for us because of X
The
and
differences, yeah.
Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way you just do things or what you have available to you. So, yeah, it's been insanity. I mean, I'm the fifth generation here, and so between the fourth and fifth generation of owning this place or buying it from the previous generation, it's like this is stupid, and the margins get tighter and tighter and tighter. So what we did is we bit the bullet basically, and your grandpa and grandma sacrificed. Like, you know what, they grandpa's gone now, but they could live comfortably with what they had done with their lives and outside jobs and live here. And that was part of the thing. You live here as long as you like till you die.
Mhm.
Grandpa died right over here in this living room. That's what you do. You take care of them until they're gone. And now we've got it set up so you guys are not going to have to hopefully do giant improvements like your mom and I have done. And we've bit off a lot because I like that long-term vision right now too. So I push hard and I put a lot of things on the plan to get done so that we can not have to when the future comes and you really can't improve,
Mhm.
or because of that, we've already done the improvements. We've got it in place. It's we're just a bunch of squirrels gathering a bunch of nuts in one spot and hopefully making the bigger pile so that we can weather through some of those tough times, like just like last year. Lost money on calves.
Right.
We lost a lot of money. A few years ago we made good money. That what he did, what we put it right back into the place with improvements. It isn't
Reinvested.
like we went to Mexico or
Yep.
took an Italian cruise or you blah
I,
blah
I
blah.
was gonna
I
say
mean,
I saw a meme on Twitter the other day. It showed what it showed was it was a cow eating at the trough. Typically it's like a normal feedlot trough. You
yeah.
got strung out, and it was looking at the camera and it had hay just coming out of its mouth, and it goes, "There's my beach vacation eating my Italian cruise." I'm like, it's pretty accurate.
That is 100% dead on. Oh yeah. Oh my God, that's funny. That's true.
When I
That is
saw that,
true.
I laughed because I was like, that's too accurate. So
Well, I look out and I see what we had as 270 ton of hay
yeah,
piled in here, ready for the winter. And I'm thinking, I always try to put in a little extra because you're
you never
planning
know.
for contingencies, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because the last thing I want to do is have cows standing out here with nothing to eat because it's fall, winter, coming out of into early spring. The grass isn't up yet, and we're trying to keep calves alive because they got to milk, and there's no hay. You've
Right.
ran out. That you can't have that happen. And we're getting down and we're going to be okay. But we started feeding a month and a half earlier than normal. A month and a half, 6 weeks earlier of feeding because we had heavy, deep snows, and those cows, they had to eat. So you
Right.
start feeding. And so I look out here and I see this hay yard is dwindling down every day. It's getting smaller and smaller. And I look at this big pile of grass that was there, stand up, it's about 5 foot tall, just a sea of it. And it's getting to be bare. And then I look over where my feeding ground is, and there's nothing but cow shit. Like, well, there's the law of thermodynamics right there.
Yeah.
Maintaining some body heat is all that amounts to. And so it's like, good God, what are we doing here? So, but that's just what it is. It's the reality of it, and it's how it goes. And if we can't feed hay, we don't get cow farts and do our part to pollute the planet.
Stop.
Yeah,
Then
God.
so and that's something I was thinking of. I was actually two things. So the reinvestment part, like for example, one of the first things you and mom really invested in was the corral work, which is it's not wood anymore, it's all steel. And like you and grandpa said, grandpa before he died, he said, "Yep, should be good enough so that I don't have to worry about it for the rest of my life. It'll be your problem." I'm like,
I
thanks.
believe the exact quote was, "Hey, Dad, should we do this with this and put it in this way?" And he goes, "I don't give a shit. I ain't going to be around when it rots anyway."
Yep. Okay,
Right?
thanks.
Yeah. Well, but that's true. And so, but nothing lasts forever. And so you want to make it last as long as you can. So I
Mhm.
don't think on these corrals, I think that for the most part, your grandchildren will probably maybe the ones who have to do some work on them.
Yeah, take a
Replace some
panel
posts.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, posts, mainly the posts, then panels. I mean, it takes wear and tear. And you have a 2,200, 2,300 pound bull hit a corral because he's fighting with another bull. I mean, go ahead and stop that. I dare you. So it's yeah, exactly. Hey, big fella, don't do that. That isn't going to happen. So I mean, stuff happens, wear and tear, and you hate to see it happen, but it does, and you fix it. You repair. So you've always got a little bit of fresh barbed wire laying here. You've got posts, and so you can do those repairs when you need to, and then you have a bigger pile of them. So okay, all right, this stretch of fence we're going to replace this year, and I've got stuff in my list that
Mhm.
will go through start on that we didn't get last year or the year before, frankly, for a couple of those items. I mean, you just can't get it all done, and as much as you want, some of that's I try to cram a lot of that long term vision into the short term too, and
Yeah,
I'll
you get
knock it
greedy.
off.
Well, the other thing too is it was kind of nice because I got to see when I was home a uh brace post that is no longer what it used to be, and it's no longer a sore eye or an eyesore. So we used to have a brace post that was made out of telegraph post, and in a
Oh, the
weird way,
cross
it was
the
yeah,
cross braces on it.
yeah, the cross beam. Instead of having one post like this, just go across when you have the two posts, so it looks like that one is standing up. We had two of them bolted in the middle so that they were sitting like this going across, and it
Not
looked
me. I
so
would never.
weird.
I would never build one like that. That was okay, but
Grandpa
again,
didn't either.
he didn't either. But you know what?
It worked.
Again, they were using what they had
Mm,
because they had nothing else.
yeah,
When you're using cross pieces off of telephone telegraph poles, telegraph with
yeah,
a ph, not telephone, but some of those were telegraph posts. That held insulators and stuff for lines. When you're using that to build and to maintain fence, times are tough.
right.
And you use what you got, and sometimes times aren't as tough as they probably were advertised, but it's laying there, and we're going to use it, by God, because I'm not going to have to spend any money doing it. But you know what? That's what keeps people on this place too. So we've got a really good available time in our lives where we are able to weather some of those storms maybe a little bit better and make the improvements we can so that it's more sustainable for other generations. So I'm going to have great grandkids probably that I'll never know, but they will be set up as should everybody choose to stay here, that you know what, they're not going to have to worry about it. It's just going to be what it is to them. They're not going to think about or have to even recognize wooden gates that didn't swing, and posts that were rotten, and you hold them
Yeah.
together with a piece of rope, because between the two of them flopping, if you put them with a rope, they'll only use like this
Yep.
much movement, and you can still work some cattle in there. They'll never have to know that, which is a good thing.
Oh yeah. Well, and I was gonna say also things like um
Waterers.
well waters, but I was also thinking like the giant old homestead panel fence that's no longer there. Stuff that you literally could not see through, and now we have metal panel, and you can see through things. You can crawl through it. It's
Yeah, it was, and that was
yeah,
a weather break really, and what I've done is taken that eyesore out because it was nothing now except a hazard because it was falling over, falling
mm,
down, nails sticking out. We completely cleaned that up, burned it, and now for that kind of a windbreak, I got our hay bale stacked there. So it still serves the same purpose in a way, but you know, is more functional, shall we say?
yeah.
Maybe.
Well, then, so then moving on. Normally in our meetings, because I went through and I looked at the last 3 years meetings, and I was like, oh, this is kind of what we've talked about. We also talked about breeding plans, so we don't just willy nilly say, oh, this will look good, let's try it. We actually have we do think about it and we plan for it, because especially with horses, you have to plan for horses a little bit more than you do the cattle. But then at the same time with the cattle, you have to make sure that you have enough bulls for saturation. What does
Right
saturation
cow
mean?
and the right bulls.
And the right bulls, because you don't want to start inbreeding. But like some people don't understand saturation either, which is we try to go for one bull to 20 cows.
That is saturation
Yeah.
compared to
Versus
most.
versus having one bull to 40, which is you're risking not getting all the cows pregnant, which
Well, and yeah, and that's all dependent on the bull. You know, there's some guys that you'll run anywhere. Yes, ask somebody, ask a guy who's been around a long time. How many how many what's your cow to bull ratio? Well, it depends. Anywhere, one bull to 35 to 50 cows. A bull could take care of 50 cows. That bull's got a high libido.
yeah.
Absolutely, he'll take care of it. But you know what? The older they get, the fatter they get, the less interested they are in that.
Mm,
So I love to have a high saturation rate on our bull to cow ratio. What's it cost us to house a bull versus if I get two extra calves or I have two less dry cows, that bull has paid for himself. Done deal. I mean, I'll do that. And then as the bulls age, or you know, things happen to them. You know, we got one that, and we joke about this, or we did a thing on why we have red Angus versus black Angus, and the advantages to it. And one of the disadvantages, frankly, is a lot of times our reds have poor feet,
right.
and so
And
you have to
we're finding
completely
that
watch
out.
them. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a breed. It's known in the breed. Every breed is like this, especially uh, some are better than others, but you're always
Yeah.
watching for those sorts of things. I mean, those are always things. But yeah, our breed is like that as well. And so I just took a bull to town because his feet were growing out a little bit. He's 4 or 5 years old, and I was like, not seen anything until then. Haven't seen anything in any progeny, but his feet were going. I was like, ooh, okay, he's done. Take him to town. If I'd have known it was going to be like that, and saw that growth, I'd have taken him to town last fall. I housed him all winter long,
Yeah.
cost us money.
Yeah.
So take that money, but at the same time, the bull prices have gone up even for slaughter bulls. So
Small win.
I might have made, we might have made money on him.
You
Who
should have
knows?
lot.
You're not gonna make money on him. We're gonna
No.
lose
Yeah.
less than we
Yeah.
normally would.
I was like, you should have tried to castrate him before you left, so you had some fresh oysters.
You don't need 40 pounds of sliced oysters out of a
Yes, you
bull.
do.
It's
Yes,
no,
you
you
do.
don't.
Don't you say that.
No, not. No, I'm not. I don't need that. I don't need to have Rocky Mountain oysters out of two oysters. That's yeah. I don't think so.
uh,
But anyway, you know, you rotate your bulls, you manage them. I've got, you know, we keep records of, okay, this group of cows can go with this bull, and then these can be bred with this bull. Pretty soon, that bull's used up. You can't use him anywhere. Okay, he's got to go, and
right.
you keep bringing in fresh blood. And then we talked about heterosis here not too long ago as well. It's not a bad idea to bring in some, you know, part red Angus into your bulls that are, and you can still have more than, if your bull is more than 50% red Angus registered red or verified, you can still qualify for those programs. that will enhance your sales through the Red Angus Association, right?
Oh,
So,
right. Yeah.
um, it's not a bad thing to do that. What we do is we watch and really look at our bloodlines within our reds. And so when we're checking out for a bull sale, now Braden and I just went to Hamilton a week ago. God, what's today? Friday? A week ago, Wednesday.
Yeah.
We went over there and looked at some bulls that I've been wanting to go to this place again for some of the improvements. They've got some really nice bulls, really even herd. I mean, and then you're looking at what are the top ones you really want. But when you find out which ones you want, then you go back to your catalog that they have for sale catalog and has their, not just their EPDs, but it also has their lineage. And I want to look at who they've got, who we've got. And so we don't start having, cousins or,
Right.
some of those can be very close. So you want to make sure that your lineage stays far enough apart that you're not going to have any issues like that. So
Or like the other thing too, like the feed issue. You noticed there was a certain bloodline, so you just avoided it completely this time,
yeah,
and you went
that's
for
right.
something else. So that's
Well,
another
and,
reason
and
too.
and not that all of them are bad. It's just that some have a tendency in that
Yeah.
groupage or in that lineage that could. And so
When you talked to
there's
one of the owners too, or the manager or something as well, and she told you, she's like, "Yeah, I recommend not buying that one." Right.
yeah, because they know who knows your cattle better than you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she has worked as a geneticist for, I mean, great. And I really like that family. I mean, just met them, but really like them. And Sutherland Red Angus, Hamilton or Stevensville, Montana. Really good people. Spent the day or half a day with them, and I was saying, I like this. She goes, you know what? Maybe I'd stay away from him. He's got a little bit longer growth on the past or some of these others. I'm like, you know what? I thank you. I appreciate that. That's being good and honest. We don't want you to have a kind of a bad taste in your mouth for buying a bull that
Salesmanship.
maybe you wouldn't be happen. Yes, sustainable salesmanship, not just here's a used car.
Yeah. Well, and that's something. I mean, to pull my school into it a little bit. They asked us to use our own family business or something like that. That if we have our own business, so I use the ranch naturally. So
Because you're working on your MBA.
right, and
Yeah.
the thing was, it was like
So
a
you can dig ditch with a degree.
yeah. It was talking about like value chain management, and then costs and analysis and stuff like that. So all these things that you get to use to kind of analyze how you are as a business, and one of those was customer service. and
Yeah.
and I was like, I think that's one of the reasons that makes us particularly. It's hard to say we have customer service with the cattle, because it's more of a just a mass, here you go, this is what it is.
Yeah.
But when it comes to
But you're
horses,
still trying to create a good product.
yes, but your one-on-one customer service isn't necessarily there. It
Right.
can be if somebody's like, hey, I want to steer. I'm like, okay, we can help you out.
Mm-hmm.
But that'd be totally different beast.
Well, we've done
um
that.
yeah, and we have, and it would be awesome if we could get to that point eventually. Whole herd, but whatever.
Right.
Moving John.
Long-term vision. Long-term
Yep,
vision.
yep, long term. Talking about horses though, I was like, hey, I think one of the reasons why I mean, to an extent, we struggle to keep horses on a regular basis available is because word of mouth and people returning. And that's because we try to provide good salesmanship and customer service throughout the life of that animal. It's like a lifetime warranty in the sense that, oh, you have a problem. Now, it may cost you a little bit to do like what we call tune up training or something like that, but we will always be there, and we can always provide services like, hey, you need us to come do some lessons or something like that. That's too easy. Like,
Or just
do
an
that.
evaluation.
Yeah,
See
or
what you're
hey,
doing
we
wrong.
noticed. Yep, this is what I think you're doing wrong, and let me try it out. Yep, okay, got it. Okay, so here's what I suggest you do, and we help you. And I think doing that, even cattle, like what they're doing, what the Sutherland family's doing, that's great. I think that's how you always get customers to return, is if you're honest with them and you help them out to the best of your ability.
Right. Right. And they have a lot of repeat customers.
Probably
What does
because of
that tell
that.
you?
Yep.
What does that tell you? Right.
Yep.
So yeah, no. And so you got a bull plan. Uh, this managing the herd is not just following them around and putting them on grass. It is matching bulls to cattle, culling the cattle that you can have really good genetics but you can mix two animals together and you can come out with something poor. Well, you don't want to keep that. Or if you have kept it because it looked like it was going to be good early on, and you go, I'll make a good replacement heifer, and she turns out to not be, get rid of her.
Oh, yep, yeah. And you have to be
Uh,
kind of I would say you have to be kind of savage about it too, because if you're not gonna stick to your guns, it's not gonna work out, because it's gonna ultimately, you're gonna do a couple generations of, maybe that cow produces two or three calves, and then you decide to keep two out of those three, and they also have poor genetics. That you realize, like, it can snowball like that, and you don't want
well, let's
that.
take a take a look at it this way. You take a cup of coffee and you fill it half or three-quarters full.
Okay.
All right, you see, it's got a certain dark, rich color to it,
Mm-hmm.
and you start slowly allowing that coffee to be diluted with water, something that you don't want necessarily.
Yeah.
In other words, our heifers that you keep are not the quality you want, and you keep them in the herd and you keep diluting your herd, just like you would put water in coffee. Pretty soon it's going to get diluted to where you fill that cup up with more water. Your coffee doesn't taste the same. It doesn't look the same. Doesn't
Yep.
have the same effect caffeine wise. But if you take that same three-quarter cup and you keep putting that in with really good coffee of the same quality or better, it's just going to get richer, darker, better, more robust, and it will last longer.
Yeah.
I know it's not the great analogy, but it's the same thing. It's all about dilution of quality
Mm-hmm.
or increasing your quality, and that's what you're trying to do. And sometimes, frankly, it doesn't work out. I mean,
Not
what
always.
have I said? People ask about genetics all the time when I'm
Oh
teaching a
yeah.
clinic, horse clinic, about, oh my God, what if you cross this with that? And I said, well, look, I've told the story about Marilyn Monroe and Albert Einstein. How she said, if they were to marry and have children, how they'd be beautiful and smart, and everything would be wonderful. And he looked at her and said, yeah, and they could be dumb and ugly too.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know what you're going to get, right? Even though you have good genetics on both sides, you can, those alleles line up to where you got somebody who's not quite as desirable. So you call them, and you're right. Savage is probably um, one way to look at it. Discerning, I guess, is
Yeah.
maybe a little less cold, but
Yeah.
it's about sustainability, right? I mean, you have to do that to have a good, sustainable, and healthy herd.
Right.
So you want to, what you'd love to have is a bunch of cows that live off of a pound of hay a day. Not going to happen, you know.
Yeah.
But no, that are very efficient. And you look at efficiency on these cattle too. What is their called stability, or maintenance? I'm sorry, stability is how long they'll stay in the herd breeding and having a calf for 5 years or longer. That's stability. Maintenance is how much does it take? How many pounds of feed does it take to maintain this animal? Some of them eat more. It's just like people. You've seen skinny people that eat a ton.
Right.
Call them. You don't want them in your herd. You
Right.
want that. You want that one that can live off of fresh air and sunshine. Um, and some people try to do that literally. The old joke is, boy, I almost had my cows. I had them broke from eating. Didn't eat a damn thing. Almost had them broke from drinking, and then they went and died on me.
Yeah.
So you got to still take care of them, but you want to get the best bang out of your animal as you can. It's about efficiency.
Right.
Big cows eat a lot of grass generally, and like our vet said, if she's not too worried about how big that cow is, because we've got a couple of them that are pretty dang big. She goes, okay, if she'll raise a calf that's half her weight, so what? And that's a good point. However, you're still putting feed in her overall,
Yeah.
so you have to look at that. And that's why,
It's your cost analysis. Am I getting out of it what
right,
I'm putting into it? Yeah.
right, right.
Um.
So yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
I was just gonna kind of move on to like pasture management. I know we've talked about this multiple times about ground rotation and stuff like that, but sometimes during these meetings we typically come up with, hey, I noticed, like, I think last year was a big one. Hey, I noticed that we've got a lot of weed issues. We need to spray and try and remove this particular weed. And so it's not just you go out there and you spray willy-nilly. It's a planned, okay, I'm going to spray this location and this is what I'm looking to reduce. And then you also don't always you don't just spray the whole place. You will at times, or Braden, because Braden's the range guy, spray locations and compare and make
Right.
adjustments, and then do what you need to do to try and one, sustain the land, and then also remove what needs to be removed without creating any sort of threat to wildlife or our animals
Right.
or the ground itself.
It's kind of funny how your perspective is in the timeline, how fast and how things change. Of course, you've had a lot of things going on, and did a little deal in Afghanistan, and a change and life change in different parts of the country. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we saw that really weed issue come on 3 years ago, and sprayed for them year before last.
Okay.
Where were you?
It's probably in JRTC in the middle of a rotation.
Exactly. So, but that's a good point though. Things do get away, and you have to stay on top and keep revisiting. Okay, what were we going to do? How did that work? And Braden is our guy for that. His range management skills and his knowledge there are underutilized. Because he doesn't say a damn thing. You can't hardly get two
Not
words
unless you
out of him.
throw some alcohol down his
Yeah,
gullet.
get some beer in him a little bit, and he's pretty good. So yes, but anyhow, you know, management practices have changed also over the years. We used to do, I remember when I was a kid, we had large pastures, and the only thing you had, and it's still a tool today, is you had your water, keep your water fresh,
Yep.
and you put your mineral and salt out in areas where there was no water to
To
drag them out, because normally these cows aren't going to travel for it anyway, but you put them out there so they crave it. They go, they graze, and then they come back. Horses, you don't have to do that. A horse will travel for grass.
Right.
But cows, if that grass grows right next to the water hole, guess what they're going to do? They're going to mash grass down, laying on it right next to the water hole. So
Yeah. Well, that's why I always say it looks like a baseball field where the water is, because
it is.
they just
Yeah.
they just mash it down to where it looks like it's the diamond, and then there's still grass way out in the corner, but they're not going to go get it.
No, well, it's all about, and for them, it's about efficiency too. It's like every other animal, including humans. It's conservation of energy.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm not going to put any effort into this if I don't get any benefit out of it. So
Right.
as long as they can stay close and continue to eat and they do good, hey, they're fine with it. So um, yeah, it's different because now I think we try to manage our ground a little better actually. And when you've got a lot of ground, or a lot of ground that's in an arid country like we're at, it takes a lot of acreage. I mean, we've got, compared to some places in the Southwest, we've got very small places because we can handle a lot more animals, or less acres per animal. I should put it that way. We're talking 20 acres per
Yeah.
pair. You go down to the Southwest and you might have to double or triple that
Right.
for a cow to make it. And they're traveling to get that. You get heat issues, which you can't do anything about necessarily. But then you go down to like, say, Missouri, Kentucky, where you're at. It's animals per acre there because of the different vegetation. So you do this a little differently, and then you can rotate. Some places you got so much feed it doesn't matter if you do it. Others you don't have any feed, so you really got to let them go. Others in that middle ground, you want to maximize what you've got, and that's kind of where we're at. Where rest rotation, and I don't think rest rotation is a bad thing for anywhere you're at if you
Right.
can do it. But I'd like to do that even more, and then we can be much more efficient and a little easier on the ground as well.
Yeah. Well, it ends up, again, cost benefit analysis. You're getting more out of it long term.
Well, and it's not cheap. Even cross fencing, with electricity, you take a mile of electrical fence and you're putting your posts out there 25, 30 feet apart, but you're going to run a couple of wires across. Doesn't mean that they're not going to, it's going to deter them. You hope it does, but you damn sure don't run two different herds of cows with bulls on each one. I mean, you got to separate them because, bulls are bulls. They'll just walk right through stuff if they can get through it because she looks better over there.
The grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever species that grass might happen to be. So.
Another thing too is purchases. We've definitely had to discuss before. Hey, so this year we're gonna need to buy this, and it can be um we've tried to do land. Mostly it's been leasing so far, but then animals and equipment have been the big one. Like, hey, this year we're gonna have to replace the tractor. This year we know we're gonna have to, like we talked about earlier, replace a bull or maybe a stallion, depending on what's
Welder.
going on. A
You know,
welder.
your mother, we were trying to get that welder started, work on these calf jugs that time, or get them started.
Is this
I
the
couldn't
old
get
welder?
the old welder.
Yep.
Yeah,
Using a
the
Jeep
old
engine.
1947 Willys Jeep engine power in this thing, and it was a beast if you could get it to run.
If
Yeah. Finally and we're struggling with it. She finally goes, you know what? It's time to buy a welder. I'm
after
like, no, we can get
75
this.
years.
Yeah, and like finally she talked me into this. All right, there's $6,000 for a welder, plus. And then, the way we did it was okay because we got a small wire feed we threw in with it. And, because of rebates and all that kind of stuff, it actually paid to buy this other secondary smaller welder for use too. But it's still, there's 5-6 grand right there.
Yep.
And you don't use it every day, but it's there and you use it when you can and as much as you can. So, welder, generator, you know, electric door opener, whatever else that thing will do for that amount of money. You wish.
Yeah.
Well, look at the bale feeder we stuck on the pickup before your
Right.
grandpa died.
Right.
That was before it's before we even formed the LLC. Your grandpa was struggling with that and everything. We talked about that and building it. And I said, all right.
Because he was
So
originally using big square bales, and then it got to
well,
he got
we
he got
had
a
to
hold of
that
some
year.
big ones. Yeah.
We only 1 year because there was no hay in the country, and that was poor quality hay. It was a bad year, so we did get some poor quality hay, but they happened to be in big squares. And he built a ramp and a sled to pull them up onto with a winch. It
Which
was ugly.
we're talking financial essentially because of um equipment and stuff like that, but sometimes there's hay, and that's an unforeseen thing too. Is okay, we're assuming every year is going to be a good year with hay, but then bad years hay because people either can't produce it because of drought or lost because of hail or something like that.
Right.
Suddenly your hay prices, they might go up exponentially, and you're not expecting that, and you have to try and, well, I mean, you have to start liquidating assets, in this case animals, to try and pay for hay so that you can pay for the rest of the herd.
Well, and hay is a consumable. It's not something
Right.
that you put money into and it's there next year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's consumable. So, and it was a tough year last year with all these grasshoppers and stuff. And there was some hay in the country, but the later it got, the hay quality got worse, or the ability to find it, and the price skyrocketed. And it wasn't just here. You have places, Colorado, Texas, they had no hay, and they were pulling hay out of here, $200 a ton. Well, if you got a, if you're building hay, that's your dream
Oh yeah.
until it happens to you.
Right.
I mean, so, but, um, it's that's the market. So it's poor enough that I got two neighbors. I think you were here, maybe you weren't here, when one of them come to me,
Yep, I
and
was there.
okay, during Christmas time, said, "Hey,
Didn't have a bale.
I don't have a bale, and I've got a couple of steers. Can I buy a bale of hay from you?" And I'm like, "Oh God!" And it's early in the year, and I'm thinking, okay, because you make a little contingency, but it could be tight.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's one bale, and they're struggling, so yeah, you can buy a bale, and I just give it to them for right at what we had into it. I mean, didn't make any money on it, which isn't the point. I just had some other neighbors that you know really well, and was over there, and they are looking for hay because they ran out. The hay quality they had was really poor.
Mm-hmm.
They're struggling. I'm like, how can you say no? I'm not gonna
Right.
say no. And at this point, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can. And they're gonna keep looking for hay, but then I told them, I said, look, we got enough. We'll help you out. I mean, that's kind of what this is about too, is helping each other out. So sometimes you do short yourself a little bit, and we may short ourselves, but we'll make it up with green grass and in other ways too. So
Yeah. Well, and then animal purchases. Were you expecting to buy two studs?
no,
Okay.
well, I was expecting to buy one stud.
How'd it turn
Uh,
into two?
well, it turned into two because they were very young. I was really looking for something that was already a proven breeding stud,
Oh yeah. Okay.
but you know, uh, nothing that is like a 3 to 4 year old stud that's been proven. That would have been perfect because then you got a lot of longevity left,
You're right.
and
Yeah.
you can and they're proven. You can see some of the progeny. So instead of that, the next best thing was to buy a young stud. I was thinking a yearling, a 2 year old, maybe a yearling. Check them out. Well, that
None of
wasn't
those.
happening. That's such a tight niche that they're either gelded by then or they're not proven, obviously. So you take a chance and you look at some horses, and I bought a couple of well, they were still on their mother. They were colts, and looked at them and went, okay, that one's good. And you know what? And of course your mother, why don't you buy two?
Like two llamas.
Yeah, well, yeah. I had nothing to do with that one. That was all your grandmother.
I know, but I'm never gonna let that one go.
Oh, don't let that one go. Yeah, one llama would have integrated into a herd and taught these horses that llamas
Oh,
are
absolutely. 20 years
okay.
ago.
But let's buy two of them because it was there and it was cheap, and they might get lonely. No, they won't get lonely, and then they hang together, and yeah, it was a mess. So anyway, your mother goes, "Why don't we buy have two studs?" And I go, "No, we're not running that many horses.
Yeah, not right now.
We want one stud, and your brother too. Why don't you just make them both?" No, I want to choose between the two of these. The best one, we will gild the other one, keep the best one as a stud, and then we can still go ahead and cover the cost of them by selling the one that we gild.
Yeah. Well, and I was
So
gonna say it's also a pain to deal with one stud as is, then to deal with a second one, trying to keep them separated. Just
I feel bad for studs. I really do. I mean, you can
yeah,
give them the best life you can, but it's not like they're out running with the
it's a
herd.
life of captivity for sure.
It is, and it's you try to make that captivity as free as you can, but sometimes it's not as free as you want, and partially is because of their attitude or what their libido is, and
Yeah.
there's different issues that way too. But yeah, so we've got a good plan here. I think you were home and we were evaluating the horses, and at some point we'll have a little video put together on that. I think that we'll stick
Yeah.
on our YouTube too, but I'm not ready yet.
But anyway, that's kind of what we do with annual meetings. We don't just wing everything. We
No.
do this. These heads aren't just hat racks, my friends. they are thinking machines most of the time. Not always, but most of the time.
They're reacting machines. How's that?
Also true. Gosh,
It
that's so
really
true.
is. You got a best laid plan, but you know what? Things happen. So yeah.
All right. I think with that, we'll let Dad sign
Oh,
us off.
well, thanks for joining us, and we appreciate you watching. And you know what? If you got something you want us to talk about or questions, go ahead and ask. But until then, thank you till you're better paid.